cowboy accepted an Apache slave as payment didn't know he's taking care of the chief's daughter. The sun had just begun its slow descent behind the distant hills, casting a warm golden glow over the wide-open ranch. The air was quiet except for the occasional sound of wind rustling through the tall grasses and the distant lowing of cattle. Tom, the rancher, wiped the sweat from his brow and leaned against the wooden fence he had been repairing all afternoon. The work had been long and tiring, and the ache in his muscles reminded him that he had spent most of his life alone, managing the ranch on his own. He had grown used to the solitude. It was the way life had unfolded for him after his parents had passed and his siblings had moved to the city. Yet despite the calm, he often felt the weight of loneliness settle on his shoulders like the evening chill. Tom adjusted his hat, brushing the dust from his worn jeans, and glanced over the horizon. The light was fading quickly now, and the long shadows stretched across the dusty ground. That's when he heard it. A faint, uneven shuffle that didn't quite sound like the usual rustle of the animals or the wind. He froze for a moment, listening carefully. His hand instinctively went to the fence post for support as he strained to hear over the soft hum of evening. Then, from the trail leading to his ranch, a figure appeared. It was a woman, walking slowly, almost as if each step required great effort. She carried a small bundle of belongings wrapped in a cloth, and her head was bound. Her clothes were simple, worn, and dusty, showing signs of a long journey. Tom's first instinct was caution. It was unusual for anyone to appear on his property this late in the day. But as she drew closer, he noticed something else. Fatigue, deep and bone-tired, in the way she dragged her feet and the slight tremor in her shoulders. She looked like someone who had been traveling for miles without rest. When she finally reached the gate, she paused, her eyes briefly meeting Tom's. I'll sleep on the floor, she whispered, her voice soft but steady. The words were simple, yet they carried a weight that made Tom pause. There was no demand, no expectation, only a quiet plea for shelter. Something in her tone, the way she spoke without arrogance or fear, stirred a sense of responsibility in him. But Bess, he felt a pull he hadn't expected, an instinct that told him she needed help and that he was the one who could offer it. Tom straightened and walked toward her, keeping his voice calm. Don't worry about the floor. You'll be safe here. The woman gave a small, almost imperceptible nod, relief flickering across her face. She followed him slowly, each step careful, as if she were afraid to disturb the quiet around the ranch. The wooden boards of the porch creaked under their feet as they entered the modest house. Tom turned on a lamp, casting a warm circle of light in the small living room. It was simple, with a few pieces of well-used furniture, the smell of wood and earth filling the space. He gestured toward a chair near the fireplace. "You can sit here for a moment," he said. I'll get you something to eat and some water." She lowered herself carefully into the chair, keeping her bundle close to her chest. Her hands were rough, calloused from hard work, and her eyes carried a quiet intensity. There was a sense of resilience in her demeanor, a strength that suggested she had faced challenges before and survived. Tom could see it, even if he didn't yet know her story. While she rested, he went to the kitchen to prepare a simple meal. Bread, cheese, and warm water. He didn't say much. Words felt unnecessary. The sound of the kettle humming and the quiet clatter of utensils filled the space in a way that was almost comforting. When he returned with the food, she looked at him with a faint, grateful smile. "Thank you," she said quietly. "I didn't expect anyone to help me tonight." "Everyone needs a place to rest sometimes," he he replied. You don't have to explain anything. Just eat and get some strength back. She ate slowly, carefully, as if she wanted to savor the food after going without for so long. Tom watched her, noticing the small details. The way her eyes flicked toward the window at the darkening sky. The way she occasionally touched the bundle beside her, as though it held precious memories. He wondered about her journey, where she had come from, and why she was traveling alone. But he decided not to ask immediately. Sometimes silence spoke louder than questions, and tonight she seemed to need that more than words. After finishing her meal, she stood and moved toward the corner of the room, where a small blanket was folded on the floor. I'll be fine here, she whispered. I don't want to be in the way. Tom hesitated for a moment, then quietly placed a small cot near the wall. You don't have to be in the way, he said gently. This will be more comfortable than the floor, and you can have some privacy. She looked at him, surprise and gratitude mingling in her expression. Thank you, she said softly. She unwrapped her bundle, arranging it neatly beside the cot, and settled down. The exhaustion in her body was evident as she curled under the blanket, her breathing slowing as she began to relax. Tom watched for a few moments, feeling a sense of quiet satisfaction. He had spent many nights alone on the ranch, and while he had grown used to solitude, he realized that having someone else here, even temporarily, brought a strange sense of warmth. Outside, the sun dipped fully below the hills, and the sky turned a deep shade of blue. Stars began to twinkle faintly above the open fields, and the wind whispered through the grass. Inside, the house was calm, the soft glow of the lamp casting shadows that danced gently on the walls. Tom returned to his chair and sat down, keeping an eye on the woman. But he didn't know her story yet, and he didn't need to. For now, it was enough to provide safety and a place to rest. He thought about the long days spent repairing fences, feeding animals, and tending to the land. Life on the ranch was hard, often lonely, but it had taught him patience, resilience, and the value of quiet moments. This evening, with the unexpected presence of a weary traveler, he felt a shift, a reminder that even in solitude, connections could appear unexpectedly, bringing small sparks of hope and companionship. The woman, now resting quietly on the cot, seemed to sense the same peace. Her breathing was even, her eyes closed, but the faint tension in her shoulders had eased. She had come seeking nothing but a place to rest, yet in doing so she had brought a subtle change to the ranch, a reminder of the human need for care, empathy, and understanding. As night deepened, Tom finally allowed himself to relax. He leaned back in his chair, listening to the soft rhythm of the wind and the occasional distant call of an owl. The ranch, usually so quiet and solitary, now held the quiet presence of another human being. It was a small shift, but it carried a profound sense of connection. And in that simple, unspoken understanding, both the rancher and the traveler found a measure of comfort that neither had expected when the day began. Tom thought about the days ahead. He would ask her questions eventually, learn her story, and perhaps even offer guidance or support. But tonight was only about rest. And as he watched her settle into a peaceful sleep, he realized that sometimes even the smallest act of kindness, offering a meal, a chair, or a safe place to rest, could create ripples far beyond what anyone could imagine. Outside, the ranch lay quiet under the blanket of night. The stars shimmered like tiny beacons of hope, and the wind carried the soft promise of a new day. Inside, two lives, previously separate and solitary, now shared a moment of quiet connection, a simple, human moment that neither would forget. Breath. Morning came slowly over the ranch, spilling soft golden light across the fields. The air smelled of earth and grass, and the faint sound of cows lowing in the distance filled the quiet. Tom had been awake for a while, as usual, walking the perimeter of his property, checking fences and the animals. But today was different. There was someone else in the house, a quiet presence that made the early morning feel warmer, softer. He stepped lightly into the kitchen, trying not to disturb the woman still asleep in the corner. The blanket around her curled form rose and fell gently with each breath. Her hair was a little tangled, and a few strands had fallen across her face. Fire. Tom hesitated, not wanting to intrude, yet feeling a strange sense of responsibility. He went to the counter and set out 2 mugs of warm coffee. He drank his black, but he had brewed a milder version for her, just in case she preferred it. When she finally stirred, blinking against the morning light, Tom greeted her quietly. "Good morning. Did you sleep well?" She yawned, stretched carefully, and gave a faint smile. "Better than I expected," she admitted softly. "Thank you for last night," Tom shrugged lightly. "You're welcome." "Let's get some breakfast. You need energy for the day." They moved to the small table near the window. Tom set out bread, butter, and a few eggs from the fridge. He had learned over the years how simple meals could be satisfying when shared. As she ate, he noticed the careful way she handled each bite, almost as if she was savoring not just the food, but the fact that she was being cared for. Once breakfast was done, Tom went outside to check the barn and the animals. She followed, curious but respectful of his space. The sunlight warmed her face as she stepped into the open field, and Tom observed her for a moment. There was a quiet strength in the way she moved, a sense that despite her weariness, she had faced challenges before, and had survived. "You don't have to help if you don't want to," Tom said, seeing her hesitate near the fence. "I want to," she replied softly. "But it feels good to do something useful. It makes the day pass." Tom nodded. "All right, then." Despair. "Let me show you a few things." He began explaining simple tasks, how to fill the water troughs for the animals, how to check for broken fence posts, and how to feed the chickens. But she listened intently, asking a few questions, her curiosity clear. As the hours passed, their conversation was minimal but meaningful. Words were not always needed when trust and understanding were slowly forming. By mid-morning, they were working side by side, carrying feed bags and stacking them neatly in the barn. He laughed quietly when a bag tipped slightly, spilling a few grains on the floor. Tom smiled at the sound. It was a soft, genuine laugh that lifted the quiet atmosphere of the ranch. "Don't worry," he said. "You'll get used to it."
"This is harder than it looks at first." She nodded, brushing off her hands.
"I can do hard work. I've done it before," she replied, her tone steady but not proud.
But there was no boasting in her voice, only honesty. Tom sensed that she carried a lot with her, memories of challenges and lessons learned through experience. As the sun climbed higher, the day grew warmer and a light breeze carried the scent of wildflowers and dust. They paused for water, sitting on a wooden bench under the shade of a lone oak tree. Silence stretched between them, but it was comfortable, not awkward. It was a silence built on shared effort and unspoken understanding. "I didn't expect to meet anyone like you here," she said after a while, breaking the quiet. "People usually ignore others out in the open."
"They think you can handle yourself?"
Tom tilted his head thoughtfully. "Maybe. Or maybe people are just too busy to notice. But I've always believed that if someone needs help, you do what you can. No questions. Pay." She looked at him, a little surprised by his honesty. "That's Rare, she admitted. Most people think about themselves first. Tom shrugged. Maybe. But I've lived alone a long time. I know what it's like to need someone, even just for a little while. They sat in silence again, letting the words linger.
There was a connection forming, subtle but real. A bridge built from small acts of kindness and quiet respect.
She began to open up slowly, sharing bits about her life without going into details she wasn't ready to reveal.
She spoke of the land she had grown up on, the animals she had cared for, and the long walks she often took to clear her mind. Tom listened, offering small comments or questions, careful not to intrude too deeply. By late afternoon, they had accomplished several chores together. The barn was tidy, the animals fed, and the fences checked. The woman moved with more confidence now, her initial hesitance fading as she grew accustomed to the rhythm of ranch life. Tom noticed the change, a quiet pride in seeing someone adapt so quickly. When they returned to the house, the sun was beginning to set, painting the sky with shades of orange and pink. They sat on the porch, drinking water and watching the horizon. The woman sighed, a sound of relief and contentment. "It's be peaceful here," she murmured. "I didn't expect this." "It can be. Life out here is simple, but it has its own kind of beauty."
You just have to notice it. She smiled faintly, her eyes reflecting the colors of the sunset.
For a moment, neither spoke. Words weren't needed. The quiet shared space was enough. In that simple silence, a sense of trust and companionship grew. Both had been alone in different ways. He on the ranch, she in her travels. But now they shared a day that bridged the gap between strangers. As evening fell, Tom prepared a modest dinner and the woman offered to help set the table. They worked together quietly, the act of sharing a meal reinforcing the connection that had begun earlier in the day. Over dinner they spoke in short sentences, each word deliberate, each gesture respectful. The conversation was light, filled with small stories about daily life, memories of childhood, and moments of laughter over minor mishaps during the day's chores. After dinner, they cleared the dishes together. The woman paused at the sink, glancing at Tom. "I don't know how to thank you," she said softly. "You didn't have to help me at all. Yet you did. Bray. I didn't do anything special. Just gave you a place to rest and some help."
That's what anyone would hope for if they were in your shoes.
She nodded, thoughtful. "Bess, still, it feels different here. Safe. Like I'm not invisible." Tom didn't respond immediately. He understood exactly what she meant. He had spent so many years alone that he sometimes wondered if he even noticed people who needed help. Now, watching her, he realized that even small acts could have a profound impact. Later that night, she prepared to sleep again on the cot. Tom offered her a blanket, and she accepted quietly, arranging her small bundle beside her. Before lying down, she looked at him, a faint smile on her lips. "Thank you for today," she whispered. Tom nodded, feeling a sense of calm he hadn't experienced in a long time. "You're welcome," he said simply. "Rest well." The ranch grew quiet once more. Outside, the stars appeared in the clear night sky, and the wind carried the soft scent of grass and earth. Inside, two people, once strangers, had shared a day filled with small gestures, quiet conversations, and simple acts of trust. They had begun to form a bond, fragile but real, built not on words alone but on shared effort, respect, and understanding. As she drifted into sleep, Tom sat nearby for a while, reflecting on the day. He realized that the woman's presence had shifted something in him. It wasn't just companionship he felt. It was a reminder of human kindness, of the quiet ways lives could intersect and make each other better, even for a short time. And as the night deepened, both of them rested, carrying the memory of a day that had started with caution and ended in connection. In the simple rhythms of ranch life, they had found something rare, a mutual understanding, a shared trust, and the quiet reassurance that even strangers could bring light into each other's lives. The morning after their first full day together dawned slowly over the ranch, soft light spilling across the fields like a gentle promise. The woman stirred first this time, opening her eyes to the pale blue of the sky through the window. Breath. She lay quietly for a moment, savoring the calm before the day began. Last night's rest had been deep, and her body felt lighter, as though the weight of yesterday's journey had eased just a little. Tom was already awake when she got up. He was outside tending to the animals as the sun rose, a figure of steady motion in the quiet morning. The air smelled of hay, fresh earth, and the faint tang of livestock. She watched him for a moment, noting the ease with which he moved, the careful attention he gave to each task. It was clear he had spent his life in this routine, yet there was something more, something patient and grounding in the way he worked. She finally emerged from the house, tying her hair back loosely and carrying her small bundle of belongings. Tom looked up and nodded at her. "Morning," he said simply. "Coffee's ready inside, and the animals are fed. But I could use some help with the fence. Want to come along?" She hesitated for only a moment before nodding. "I can do that," she said, her voice steady. There was no bravado in her tone, only determination. It was the kind of quiet strength that made others notice without needing to speak loudly. They walked together toward the northern fence, which ran along the edge of the property where the grass grew tall and the wind often swept across the open fields. The woman carried a small toolkit Tom had given her, and he handed her a few supplies as they walked. Together, they inspected each post, checking for rot, damage, or loose nails. Occasionally, she would kneel to hammer in a nail, her brow furrowed in concentration, and Tom would glance at her, silently approving of her care and attention. Hours passed like this, filled with quiet collaboration. The rhythm of work, the repetition of small tasks, created an unspoken bond between them. They didn't need long conversations to connect. The shared effort spoke louder than words. But every now and then, small exchanges would slip through. "You've been on your own for a long time, haven't you?" she asked quietly as they paused for water. Tom shrugged, wiping his hands on his jeans. "By most of my life," he admitted. "I grew up here, and my family left town. I've managed on my own ever since. It's normal now." She looked at him thoughtfully. "It must get lonely sometimes." He nodded. "It does, but it's also peaceful. You get used to it. You find comfort in the quiet, in the work, in the land."
She smiled faintly.
I think I understand that. There's a rhythm to life like this, isn't there?
But something steady, even when the world outside feels uncertain. Tom glanced at her, noting the careful choice of words, and something about the way she spoke suggested she had seen uncertainty in her own life. Puss. He didn't push, though. He had learned long ago that people revealed their stories in their own time, and forcing it rarely helped. As the day continued, the wind picked up slightly, rustling through the tall grasses and carrying a hint of approaching weather. Dark clouds began to form on the horizon, moving slowly but unmistakably toward the ranch. Tom noticed at first the subtle change in light and air, and the woman followed his gaze. "Looks like rain," she said quietly, almost more to herself than to him. Tom nodded. Probably a storm. Could be strong. Psst. We should finish up quickly.
He moved with efficiency, directing her to help secure loose tools and make sure the animals were safe.
She followed, her movements calm but deliberate, demonstrating both attentiveness and reliability. By the time they returned to the house, the first drops of rain began to fall, light at first but growing steadily into a steady drizzle. Inside, the house was warm, smelling faintly of wood smoke from the fireplace Tom had lit earlier. They sat together at the small table, drinking hot tea and listening to the rain patter against the windows. The storm outside mirrored a subtle tension between them, not conflict, but a recognition that life could be unpredictable and fragile. "You handled the work well today," Tom said finally.
Inspiration.
I didn't expect someone to adapt so quickly, she shrugged, a faint blush touching her cheeks. I've done hard work before, she said simply.
I'm used to learning as I go, but thank you. It means a lot to hear that. There was a pause, filled only with the sound of rain and the occasional rumble of distant thunder. Then she spoke again, softly, almost as if testing the waters. Do you ever wonder if it would be different with someone else here? Pay. If you weren't alone? Tom considered the question carefully. He had rarely thought about companionship in any concrete sense. His life had been one of solitude by circumstance rather than choice, and the thought of another person sharing it was both intriguing and unfamiliar. Sometimes, he admitted slowly, but I've also learned to value quiet, steady days. Change can be unsettling, but it can also be good.
Her eyes met his, and for a moment there was a silent understanding.
They had both lived with a certain amount of isolation. Yet here, in the midst of routine chores and shared effort, they were discovering something new. The comfort of trust, the subtle strength of connection. The storm continued through the afternoon, heavy rain washing over the land, turning dust to mud and filling the air with the scent of wet earth. They moved carefully, attending to the animals, ensuring none of them were disturbed or frightened. The woman noticed a few chickens huddled near the coop and gently guided them inside, her soft voice reassuring them. Tom observed her quietly, impressed by her calm and considerate nature.
Later, as the rain eased and the sky began to clear, they ventured outside briefly. The fields were glistening with water, and the air smelled fresh and clean.
A rainbow stretched faintly across the horizon, a silent promise of beauty after the storm. They walked together to the edge of the pasture, their footsteps leaving soft impressions in the wet earth.
You've changed the rhythm here, she said, her voice quiet but reflective. I can feel it. The way I move, the way I notice things.
Psst. It's different from being alone. Tom smiled faintly, a rare softness in his expression.
And you've changed it too.
Having someone around even for a short while makes a difference. You notice things you wouldn't notice alone.
She looked down at her hands, fidgeting slightly with a loose thread on her sleeve.
I wasn't expecting this piece, she admitted.
Beck, not after everything, but I feel it here. Tom nodded, understanding exactly what she meant.
Sometimes peace finds you in the least expected places. You just have to be willing to accept it.
Beef. Evening fell, bringing with it a soft chill. They returned to the house and prepared a simple dinner together, the act of cooking side by side further strengthening the unspoken bond between them. Some people said that they made me to be safe when recognizer said I cannot memories. Said that it might be safe when it might be made means. After dinner, the woman cleared the dishes while Tom stoked the fireplace. She glanced at him, a mixture of gratitude and curiosity in her expression. "I never thought I'd find a place like this," she said softly. "A home, even for a night, that feels safe." Tom looked up from the fire, meeting her gaze. "Safety is rare," he said quietly. "But it's worth holding on to when you find it, and you don't have to leave right away. You can stay as long as you need." Her eyes widened slightly at the offer, and for a moment she didn't speak. Then, softly, "Thank you. That means more than you know." Ahead, as night deepened, they settled into their respective spaces. Tom in his usual chair, the woman on the cot she had grown accustomed to over the past 2 nights. Outside, the stars emerged once again, twinkling softly over the quiet ranch. Bare. Inside, a warm sense of connection lingered, gentle and unspoken, yet profound. Both of them realized something important that night. The bond they were forming was not built on words alone, nor on extraordinary events. It was built on shared effort, quiet understanding, small acts of kindness, and the simple acknowledgement of each other's presence. In the vast openness of the ranch, amid storms and routine chores, they had found something rare. Mutual respect, trust, and a growing awareness that even solitary lives could intersect in ways that changed them forever. And as the woman drifted into sleep, her breathing steady and relaxed, Tom leaned back in his chair, feeling a sense of peace he hadn't felt in years. The storm had passed, the rainbow had faded, and the quiet night stretched on around them. Yet the memory of the day, the work, the conversation, the shared silences, would linger, shaping their connection and deepening the trust that had begun to grow. In the simple, steady rhythm of ranch life, they had discovered a subtle truth. Sometimes the most profound bonds form not in grand gestures but in quiet moments, small kindnesses, and the gentle realization that someone else sees you and cares. The morning arrived with a crisp, clear light that made the ranch seem almost alive. The sun had not yet climbed fully into the sky, but the fields glimmered with dew, and the air smelled fresh and clean. Tom was up early, as always, checking the fences and calling the animals. The woman had woken a little later, stretching under the warm blankets on the cot, and she quietly observed him from the doorway. She had grown used to the rhythm of his life, the steady pace, the careful tending of each animal, the small but important routines that kept the ranch running smoothly. Today, however, there was a subtle tension in the air, though neither of them spoke about it at first. Gray. Tom noticed the clouds beginning to gather in the distant hills, darker than the previous storm, and a faint breeze carried a hint of change.
Looks like another storm might be coming, Tom said casually, though his voice carried a quiet seriousness. We should make sure everything is secure, just in case.
The woman nodded, quickly understanding the weight of his words.
Even small ranches could be vulnerable to sudden weather changes, and she had learned from her own life that preparation often meant the difference between safety and danger. Together they moved through the barn, checking each animal and ensuring the doors were fastened properly. While they worked, the woman began to speak, her voice quiet but steady. "I've traveled a lot," she said. "I've learned to be careful, to be ready for things I can't control. But sometimes it's hard to ask for help." Tom glanced at her, sensing a deeper story behind her words.
"It's not weakness to ask for help," he said gently. "It's strength to know when you need it."
And you're not alone here. Not anymore. She hesitated for a moment. Then spoke more openly, as though testing the trust they had begun to build.
"I left home because things were hard. People didn't understand me. Sometimes I felt invisible. And I thought, maybe if I left, I could figure things out alone. But being alone, it's not always what I thought it would be. Tom listened quietly, letting the words hang in the air. He didn't press for details, knowing that trust had to grow at its own pace. But he felt the weight of her story, the struggles and fears that had brought her to his ranch, and he realized that her vulnerability was not a burden, it was a bridge, allowing them to connect in a way that neither had expected. By midday, the clouds had thickened, and the wind picked up, rustling through the tall grasses with a low, mournful sound. The sky was a dark gray, and Tom's concern grew. "We should make sure the tools are secure and the animals are inside," he said. They moved quickly, working side by side to gather loose equipment and check that the fences were tight. The woman followed his lead, her movements confident but careful. As they finished, a sudden gust of wind rattled the barn doors and a few drops of rain began to fall. The storm was approaching faster than they had expected. Tom looked at her, his eyes meeting hers. "It's coming sooner than I thought." "You'll be safe inside, but we need to stay alert." She nodded, a flicker of worry crossing her face. "Bad. I don't want to be in the way," she said softly. "I know this is your home, your responsibility. You're not in the way. We are in this together." That's what matters. The storm hit with a sudden intensity, rain lashing against the windows, wind howling across the open fields. Inside, the house seemed small and fragile, yet it offered warmth and safety. Tom checked the animals once more, then returned to the living room where the woman was seated, her hands folded in her lap, eyes wide with concern.
"I've dealt with storms before," she said quietly. "But it's
different when you don't know the land or the animals. It feels overwhelming." Tom nodded, understanding her fear.
It can be, he said. But fear doesn't mean you're weak.
Desp, it just means you care. And I'll help you through it. As the storm raged outside, they settled near the fireplace, the warm glow casting flickering shadows across the room. Silence fell between them, but it was a shared silence, comforting rather than empty. "Pay," the woman spoke after a while, her voice tentative. "I've been running for a long time. From home, from people, from myself, base. And I thought I could handle it all alone. But maybe I was wrong. Maybe it's okay to let someone in, even if just for a little while." Tom looked at her, a mixture of understanding and quiet encouragement in his eyes. "Bay, it's more than okay," he said softly. "It's human. We all need someone sometimes. You don't have to face everything on your own." The words seemed to lift a weight from her shoulders. She relaxed slightly, leaning back in her chair, and for the first time there was a sense of ease in her posture. They spoke quietly then, sharing small stories, reflections on life and moments of humor that made them both laugh softly despite the storm outside. The rain and wind became a backdrop to their growing trust, a reminder that even in difficult circumstances, connection was possible. Hours passed and the storm slowly began to ease. The rain lessened to a drizzle and the wind calmed to a gentle breeze. Outside, the land was drenched and the animals huddled safely in their shelters. Inside, the fire crackled softly, casting warmth across the room. The woman looked at Tom, her expression thoughtful. "You've been patient with me," she said. "Psst, I didn't expect that. Most people judge too quickly." Tom smiled faintly. Patience is something you learn when you live alone. And I've learned that everyone has their story. But it's not for me to judge. I just try to help where I can. She nodded, her eyes reflecting a mixture of gratitude and introspection. But I've learned to hide a lot of myself, she said softly. But here, I feel like I can breathe, Bay. Like I can be seen. Tom felt a warmth spread through him at her words. He had spent so many years alone, yet her presence, her trust, and her openness had brought something alive in him that he hadn't felt in a long time. It wasn't just companionship, it was understanding, respect, and the quiet comfort of knowing someone else noticed and cared. The evening drew on, and they prepared a simple meal together, working side by side with ease. Conversation was light but meaningful, filled with laughter over minor mishaps in the kitchen and reflections on the day's storm. Each shared moment strengthened the bond between them, creating a sense of trust and connection that neither could ignore. After dinner, they settled in near the fireplace once more. Bed. The storm outside had passed completely, leaving the ranch quiet and serene. The woman wrapped herself in a blanket, her eyes thoughtful. I didn't know it was possible to feel safe, even just for a day, she said quietly. Tom nodded, understanding exactly what she meant. Safety isn't just about walls or shelter, he said. It's also about trust, about knowing someone will be there, even when things get difficult. Bear, thank you, she whispered, for letting me be here, for not turning me away. It means more than I can say. Tom shook his head. You don't have to thank me. You don't have to thank me. Bear, just take care of yourself. That's what matters. As night fell, they both retired to their respective spaces, the woman to her cot, Tom to his chair near the fire. Breath. Outside, the stars glimmered faintly in the clear sky, the air calm and still after the storm. Inside, a sense of peace lingered, but it was accompanied by a quiet awareness that life could be unpredictable and that trust was both fragile and precious. For the woman, the day had been a revelation. She had faced the storm both outside and within herself and discovered a sense of security and understanding she had not known in a long time. For Tom, the day had been a reminder that connection could emerge unexpectedly, even in a life long defined by solitude. And as they both drifted into sleep, the quiet bond between them grew stronger, formed not just through words but through shared experience, small acts of care, and the recognition of each other's humanity. They had faced a challenge together and in doing so had discovered something rare and valuable: trust, understanding, and the quiet strength of human connection. The morning sun rose slowly over the ranch, painting the fields with a soft golden light. The air smelled of fresh grass and dew, and the birds' gentle songs filled the quiet. Today felt different from the previous days, calmer, but with a sense of endings and new beginnings. The woman stirred on the cot, stretching her arms and letting out a quiet sigh. She had spent several nights at the ranch now, and although the comfort and safety were undeniable, she knew that soon she would have to continue her journey. Tom was already awake, walking along the fence line and checking the animals as the early sun warmed his back. He had grown used to the woman's presence, her quiet energy, and the subtle ways she had brought life into his long, solitary days. He found himself reflecting on the last few days, on the shared chores, quiet conversations, laughter, and even the storm that had tested their calm and patience. Each moment had left a mark, creating a bond neither of them could ignore. When she emerged from the house carrying her small bundle of belongings, Tom greeted her with a gentle nod. "Good morning," he said simply. "The animals are fed and the fences are secure. Are you ready for your journey?" She looked at him, a faint smile touching her lips but tinged with a little sadness. "I think so," she said softly, "but I'll miss this place. I'll miss the peace. And I'll miss the quiet kindness you've shown me." Tom felt a lump in his throat, a rare wave of emotion he didn't often allow himself to feel. "You'll always have this place to remember," he said, "and you'll carry it with you, even when you're on your path." That's something no storm or distance can take away. They spent the morning together performing small tasks, one last time. The woman helped him check the animals and tidy the barn, moving with confidence and ease. There was a gentle rhythm in their actions, a reflection of the comfort and trust that had grown over the past days. They worked side by side, exchanging soft words and occasional laughter, the bond between them evident in every movement. After the chores were done, they returned to the house. The woman prepared a small breakfast, while Tom poured coffee for both of them. They sat at the table in companionable silence, letting the warmth of the meal and the sun streaming through the window fill the room. It was a quiet morning, yet it carried a profound significance. They both knew this would be the last day they shared together, at least for now. Finally, after breakfast, the woman stood and picked up her bundle. She turned to Tom, her eyes shining with gratitude and emotion. "I can't thank you enough," she said softly.
You didn't just give me a place to rest.
Break. You gave me hope. You reminded me that kindness still exists, even when life feels hard and lonely. Bet. Tom shook his head, trying to keep his emotions steady. "You don't have to thank me," he said. "Be far. You're stronger than you realize. You made it through the storm. You handled the chores, and you faced everything that came your way." "I just offered a little support. That's all." "Bess," she smiled faintly, a tear slipping down her cheek.
"It's more than that," she whispered.
"Bay."
It's everything. Tom felt a deep sense of admiration and respect for her. In a short time, she had shown courage, resilience, and trust, qualities he had come to value deeply.
And in return, he had found something he hadn't realized he was missing: connection, warmth, and the reminder that even a solitary life could be touched by another person in meaningful ways. The woman stepped toward the door, pausing to glance at the fields, the barn, and the little house that had offered her safety. The ranch had become more than just a stop in her journey. It had become a place of refuge, reflection, and understanding. She turned back to Tom one last time, her voice steady but soft. "I'll never forget this," she said. "Not just a place, but you. I hope, maybe someday, our paths cross again." Tom nodded, his heart heavy with emotion. "I hope so too," he said quietly. "Take care of yourself out there. And remember, even when you're far away, there's someone here who wishes you well." They walked together to the gate, the morning sun casting long shadows across the ground. The woman tightened the straps on her bundle and paused, looking out at the open road ahead. It was a path she had chosen for herself, a continuation of the journey she had started before arriving at the ranch. Yet as she looked back at the house, she felt a sense of warmth and reassurance, an understanding that kindness and trust existed even in unexpected places. Before stepping onto the road, she turned to Tom one final time and offered a small, genuine smile. "Perhaps, goodbye," she said softly. "And thank you for everything." Tom watched her walk away, each step carrying her further down the path but leaving an indelible mark on both of them. He felt a mix of melancholy and hope, a reminder that life was full of moments like this, fleeting, meaningful, and transformative. He knew she would face challenges ahead, but he also knew that the strength and trust she had found at the ranch would stay with her. After she disappeared from sight, Tom returned to the porch, leaning against the railing and taking in the quiet beauty of the land. The wind rustled through the grasses, birds called from nearby trees, and the sun continued its climb across the sky. The ranch was once again silent, yet it no longer felt empty. The presence of the woman, her courage, and the trust they had shared lingered in the air, a subtle but powerful reminder of human connection. As the day went on, Tom returned to his usual routines, feeding animals, checking fences, and tending to the land. Despair, yet even in the familiar rhythm of work, he felt a difference. The quiet moments now carried memories of laughter, shared effort, and the simple, profound truth that one act of kindness could leave a lasting impression. He smiled to himself, thinking about the woman's quiet strength, her honesty, and the way she had reminded him that life could hold unexpected gifts even for those who had spent years in solitude. That evening, Tom sat on the porch watching the sun dip below the hills and the sky turn shades of orange and pink. He reflected on the past few days, the storm, the chores, the conversations, and the small moments that had made life feel richer and fuller. The woman's presence had brought a new perspective, reminding him that even a solitary life could be touched by connection, trust, and kindness. For her part, as she continued her journey down the dusty road, the memory of the ranch stayed with her. As she thought about the simple house, the animals, and most of all, Tom, the man who had offered her safety, understanding, and a sense of belonging without judgment. She felt a renewed sense of hope, a quiet confidence that even in a world that often felt uncertain, moments of genuine kindness could guide her forward. Days later, she would remember the ranch as more than just a place she had stayed. It would be a symbol of trust, compassion, and the subtle but profound power of human connection. And Tom, returning to his routines, would carry her memory as well, a reminder that even in a life defined by solitude, the presence of another person could leave a lasting imprint on the heart. Though their time together had been brief, it had been transformative. Both had faced personal challenges, the woman, the weight of her past, and the fear of being alone. Tom, the quiet ache of solitude, and the longing for connection. In the simple shared moments of work, conversation, and care, they had discovered something rare, the reassurance that kindness matters, trust can be built, and human connection can emerge in the most unexpected places. As night fell over the ranch, the stars glimmered softly in the clear sky. Tom stood on the porch one last time before retiring, looking out across the fields and remembering the small bundle of determination and courage who had walked into his life. A gentle smile touched his lips. He knew that life would continue, the routine would remain, and yet the presence of the woman would stay in his heart, a quiet but enduring reminder that even the simplest acts of compassion could change lives. And somewhere down the road, she would carry the memory of the ranch, the storm, and the man who had shown her that even weary travelers could find safety, trust, and a place to rest, if only for a little while.